welcome back to another fantastic episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette, and joining me today is returning champion, Bambi Lynn. How are you?
I am amazing. I'm so glad to be back. And oh my goodness, your hair is vibrant and it looks so beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So, Bambi, for those who haven't seen your episode, give us a little glimpse of who you are and your story.
Well, my name is Bambi Lynn, just like you had said, and this is my second time getting to be on your podcast sharing my story. I am a three-time published author. When I came on here before, I only had one, which was my memoir, and it was The Journey of Josephine, where God took a broken little girl and he mended her through all the trauma that I had been through. He mended her and he created who I am today. So I've been on a journey of healing. I've been on a journey of rediscovery. And so the last time, just like I said, there was only one book. Now we have two. I have The Treasures of My Heart, which, just like we were talking about, it's in the midst of the storm. Sometimes we miss the opportunities to see the lessons and the nuggets within our storm time. And so I wrote about the treasures of my heart. I wrote about the treasures that God had shown me in the midst of the storm. And then my third book that just came out on July 4th is The God Who Sees. And what I did is that I took 33 women of the Bible and I told their stories in what they had gone through and the trauma that they have experienced. I didn't take the stories and just write them as if, we were reading them, but I took their stories and I wanted women to be able to see that there were women in the Word of God that struggled and were hurt and lived in trauma just as much as we have today. So I took their stories and I talked about domestic violence. I talked about the woman that was raped. I talked about poverty, the woman that had a rainbow baby or had to give their baby up for adoption, or, so I took those stories and I created their stories so you would see that God sees you. And so The God Who Sees is the title of my third book. And it is the story of Hagar that was thrown out of Sarah and Abraham's tent, thrown into the desert with her child, a single mom. And she is in the desert of her life, wondering what's going to happen. And an angel shows up. And she gets to name God because God saw her. And that's where it came. That's where the title comes from, because I want women to know that God sees us. He sees our pain. He sees what we have been through, and he's there to redeem it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. You have been
Yes,
so busy. Wow.
I have. I have been busy. And let's see. And as of 2026, I don't know how many grandchildren I had when I was on here the last time, but I will have a total of 15 by next March. Let's see. I just took a trip, which we just talked about this briefly before we got on. I just took a trip to Alaska. I drove my daughter's car and they drove their U-Haul, and we drove 5,500 miles through the states and through British Columbia and the Yukon and Alaska. And it was a trip of a lifetime. It was a trip of humbling. It was a trip that broke you, but yet put you back together again. It was a trip that I hope to never have to do again. An experience, the thing I did, but there were so many life lessons. And so now I am writing my fourth book about traveling, sit down and travel with me.
Wow.
Because by the end of October, I should have finished all 50 states in the United States. So I have two more states to finish, to go to, and that is Oklahoma and New Mexico. And I'm hoping to do that by the end of September, beginning of October.
Wow. You're a
Yeah,
traveler. That's
I
amazing.
am.
Wow.
They
Wow.
they say, and they say, if you want to hate your country, listen to the news. If you want to learn to love your country, travel through it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's amazing. That's really cool. So during your travel, how did you see God in creation?
Oh my word. How do you not see God?
Mm,
That should be the real question. How do you see the beautiful mountains and the majestic hills and the waterfalls that are just flowing off of the mountains, and the bison that are walking beside you, and the moose that are walking across the street, and they're 7 feet tall, that sometimes they may not even fit into your house.
Yeah.
How do you not see God when you see the majesticness of beauty that you cannot even, it's like a camera doesn't do it justice, because you keep trying to take pictures over and over and over again, but your eyes are the only camera that can absorb that kind of beauty. You know, how can you not see God when you're being humbled, you know, with no internet, no radio, no telephone, and all you have is the majesticness and the splendor of the beauty around you. So that's where you see God, and you know, and God humbles you. It was the very first time ever, I'm 55 years old, that I've ever had to pee on the side of the road. Like, that was humbling. That was heart-wrenching. That was like, oh my goodness, God, what are you trying to teach me? You know, what are you trying to show me through this? And I was so exhausted. There were times it took us 15 days to travel. And 3 of those days we ended up sleeping in our car because there was no hotels. There was no motels along the path. And that humbles you. That gives you a new sense of, where am I? What am I doing? And the exhaustion to the point that you just want to pull your skin off. And the only time that I ever experienced that kind of exhaustion is when I was a young mother and your children were up all night long and you just were like, I just got to sleep. I just got to sleep. And finally you get rest, but not before you just want to pull your skin off because you were so exhausted.
Sounds like life.
It sounds like life. Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I love that you also focus on women in the Bible. I mean, from the very beginning, I guess we could thank Eve, you know?
Yeah. You know, I actually wrote, it's only a small page. I actually wrote about Eve. And
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
if I can read it, hold on. Just going to find her. Now I need glasses to see, you know.
Oh, I have glasses. I just don't like
None of us like to hold them. That's for
Nope.
sure. Okay, so I'll read this so you can know what I wrote about Eve.
Okay.
When a mother holds her child for the first time, there is a love that is unexplainable. Every mother that has experienced that kind of love knows what I'm talking about. There is no words to explain the emotions that rise within us. We all have these dreams of things that we want to instill in them. We have moments in our life that we want to tell them about. Sometimes we are afraid to have any more children because how could we love something so pure as what we are holding now, only to experience it again when we give birth to another child? It's an emotion that we cannot explain to people. We can tell a woman, don't worry, your heart will grow bigger and you'll have that same kind of feeling when you hold the next one in your arms, but they're still going to worry. Every mother wants to be the best for their children. We don't come into motherhood thinking we are on a mission to ruin their lives, but we are on a mission to make them greater people than even us. We dream about what they will become. We desire only for them, and we are willing to lead on our own lives for those children that we hold so dear in the arms and sometimes so tightly that they can't breathe. Then there is a moment that we receive a phone call that isn't one that we were expecting. And the person on the other line tells us that our child has done something illegal, that there's a hospital strung out on drugs, or a person on the other line tells us that they just dropped our child from jumping off a bridge. These situations paralyze us as mom. They strike deepest in the core of our being. They bring a numbness that we can't get rid of. Those moments break our hearts into pieces. We never imagined that this would happen as we held them for the first time when the doctors laid them in our arms. As a mom, we carry a lot of guilt. We ask the questions over and over again. Why? What could I have done? What have I done? Why my family? Why my child? Can you imagine going through that with without anybody around you to talk to? Can you imagine being the first family that was created, not having any neighbors or any girlfriends to confide in? Can you imagine being Eve when Adam came to her and told her that one son had killed her other? Can you imagine the franticness that she was experiencing? She had nobody to call, no phone to pick up and tell anybody the tragedy that just happened. She had to grieve the death of her son, and not just, but also grieve the son who did it. Did she go through her mind and think of the times that they wrestled around and maybe they got out of control? Did she think about the moments where she felt like they were competing with each other instead of just allowing both of them to be who they were? As a mom, I'm sure all those moments flashed before her eyes in a split second. I'm sure she thought of all the times that they were little mischievous, of all the late nights that she took them into bed and she said their prayers with them, and of the moments that they sat on the couch for hours listening to stories. She must have thought of the long walks that they took as a family, her sons picking up little bugs and maybe throwing them at each other. She must have thought of all the messes that they created in the house with the blankets and the pillows to make big forts that they can jump into and take down with a crash. The boo-boos she kissed to make them feel better. The instruction she was teaching them about the life and about God. She was preparing them for the future. There was never a thought in her mind that her love and her training that she was giving to her children would lead to murder. It never crossed her mind because she knew the love that she had for her children. She wouldn't understand that love wasn't enough. In those dark moments, she wouldn't understand a loving God when she experienced such grief in the death of her child. She would go back and forth in her mind thinking, did she treat one better than the other? Her mind playing tricks on her as she thought perhaps one thought differently about her love than the other. As a mom, she thinks that her love was enough. Never would she have thought that things would end like this. I can't imagine going through all those emotions without a friend close by. How did Eve do it? She knew that she was the mother of all nations, that through her bloodline and through her Messiah would come. But how could a Messiah come? How could she ever be worthy again to carry a child within her and raise them up? Brokenness does something to a mom, and sorrow over our children changes our inner being. Just a single careless action of a child can bring undescribable sadness to a mother. The world around us sees the act of what our child does in their life, and they decide to live. But a mother only sees through her arms that she held them. A mother sees her children as doctors, nurses, writers, engineers, teachers, or lawyers. She never sees her children as murderers, drug addicts, or thieves, or depressed or suicidal. As a mother, we would likely never want to give birth if we knew the outcome, if we knew the journey that motherhood would take us on. We were told that our children would grow up and they are responsible for their own lives. We are told that they are responsible for their own decisions. As adults, they have a choice. We may know that in our head, but in our hearts, we are broken. Never does a mother want to think that in her parenting that has caused any of the sorrow or the grief. We are life givers. From the time that we conceive, we are home from the womb to the crib. We carry a vision within us, but we never expect it to bring us sorrow. The lessons of life that is about choices. Sometimes people choose darkness, and sometimes those choices bring sorrow to a mother. However, a mother never leaves your corner. If life and tragedy happened to the first mom and she survived and continued on, so can we. We have more living to do no matter how motherhood turned out. There are children, and we are always in their corner.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. You are a gifted writer. This is your
Thank you.
purpose and calling. You're welcome.
And that's
love
why this book is so different, because it takes the feeling of, of Eve. It takes the feeling of her as a mom, and it relates to us as moms, because as a mom, we see what happens differently. We're just experienced the death of, Charlie Kirk in the United States, a person that, just had a voice, and he wasn't going to stop his voice. And whether you agreed with his politics, whether you agreed with his voice or not, he shared his voice, and he shared it unapologetic. He didn't apologize for it. And, and where do you think he got that from? Where do you think that he first learned to debate what you feel is truth? That was in the arms of a mom. And today, in the arms of a mom, there is a son that is missing now. But he died for his belief.
Yeah.
And that's hard for us as moms. Like, how dare somebody take our child? How dare somebody feed our child drugs or alcohol? How dare you do this to my child?
Yeah.
But as a mom, just like Eve, we're always in their corners, no matter what. They are still our children.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. You're right. Your book speaks to every woman from everywhere, from every culture, every language. It crosses borders. And that's why I hope your book goes far and wide. And are you teaching some stuff from your book? Because I know you do coaching as well.
I do coaching as well. And I also do speak at events, and I'm speaking in December. I mean, not December. I'm speaking in the first week of October. I just spoke at a revival, this past in July. Well, no, August. I spoke in August. And I continue, to speak. I speak at a shelter once a month, because I want women to understand that our stories are not our death sentences. Our stories are our beginning and are our becoming. If we can let the past be the past and look at it that we've already went through the past, and that we don't have to keep going back into the dirt and picking out the garbage and going through, the garbage bins of our lives, but that we get to let them go because we've already lived that. And if we can continue to move forward, our lives tell a story. Our lives are a testimony. Our lives are something that we can use to further the kingdom if we would just share it and if we would just live it. And I think that sometimes, I think that this whole thing, this last 24 hours, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and then today is the celebration of the 24th year of the 9/11. And I don't think it's a mistake that I'm on your show on this day, but it's this constant reminder that if you have a voice, share your voice.
Yeah.
If you have a mission, share your mission. If you love Jesus with all your heart, share that, because somebody else needs that. Somebody else needs that. That is part of healing. It is understanding that there is a higher power over us.
Yeah.
And that's part of us getting rid of the muck, that is within inside of us. And we can use our trauma, to bring peace and healing to somebody else if we would just be willing to let it go and to live with a purpose.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yes.
Honestly, it is. I can't see in the future, but I can only do what I can now. And I don't have degrees or whatever I need or whatever society said I need to do what I'm doing. What I have is lived experiences and scars to show and a story to tell.
Absolutely. And I think about that. I was just on a podcast just recently, and I said, they said, wow, you are so talented. And, gifts come from God.
Ooh.
Gifts doesn't come from this world. Gift doesn't come from degrees. Gift comes from God, and it comes from the experience that you allow to hand over to God. I have a 10th grade education. I have a GED. I homeschooled for 27 years, 6 children that are now living very productive and high intelligent lives. And that wasn't because of me, but that was because God took a willing heart.
Yeah.
You are willing, Bernadette, to do what God has called you to do. You're willing to take the scars and tell the story of the scars to set the captive free. That's all that we're called to do.
Yeah.
And Jesus will reward us. He will give us the platforms. He will give us the opportunities. These opportunities that I've been on over 250 podcasts sharing my story. My story is ordinary. because everybody's gone through trauma. My story is ordinary because everybody's gone through crap in their lives. But what makes my story extraordinary is that I'm willing to share it, because it's by the word of your testimony that people are set free. If you're willing to share it, that's where the lessons are created. That's where the stories become life to somebody else, become a first aid kit to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I remember the first time I shared a little short clips of my mental health journey. There was a lady on YouTube who said, "Thank you. This is what I needed to hear. You are so brave for sharing. We need
Yes,
more of what you're sharing." I don't know who
absolutely.
she is, but somehow what I had to share impacted her life. Had I not shared it, she wouldn't have seen a woman stepping out of her comfort zone, sharing something so open, so personal and
Yes.
open. So, yeah, you're right. There's so much power in us sharing our stories.
Absolutely. And that's why I run that ministry, Healing Through Stories, because it's one story at a time. Because if I tell my story and my story resonates to you, you're no longer living in an island. Now you are part of a community. And because the enemy wants us to feel like we're all alone, wants us to feel like we are desperate and in despair, because he keeps us in a corner. But if we share our story, somebody can grab our hand and say, I've been through the same thing. And then we together share our stories. And then we bring another hand in
Mhm.
it and we create a community. And
Yeah,
that's what you're doing, even in sharing, and starting a podcast and being successful at this, is that you're sharing that you're not an island.
yeah,
Come on, we're a community. We're a
yeah,
community that have been through some stuff, and
yeah,
let's heal and transform together. And that's
yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, you're doing that too. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So leave us with some words of encouragement. Let's say someone's watching this, they're questioning their faith, they're really struggling, whether it's in silence or publicly. What would you say to them if you were to speak to their souls?
I would say that look at the whole metamorphosis of the oyster. That when the oyster is born, there's nothing inside of that oyster until the oyster has been thrown some hurricanes, until that oyster has had some parasites tried to get inside the shell and the sand inside of there trying to push it and push it. That oyster has nothing inside until the storms of life have crashed over it. And then at the end, when you're able to open up that oyster, you see a beautiful pearl. And that pearl is the treasure that oyster has been granted and has been given because of the storms. And
Mhm.
when you look at the whole word picture, even of a butterfly, when a monarch butterfly lands on a milkweed and lays an egg, she laid a butterfly, but that butterfly had to go through the metamorphosis and
Mhm.
had to go through the darkness and had to go through the caterpillar stage. When we think of our own lives, how we've had to go through things until we end up in the chrysalis and into the darkest moments of our lives. And in those darkest moments of our lives, our spirit man is saying, you're a butterfly. You're a butterfly. Always remember you're a butterfly. And then when that butterfly is ready to emerge, to fly, it realizes its destiny. We were destined with a purpose and a plan for our lives, a plan to prosper us and not to harm us, but to give us a hope for our future. Before the foundations of time, we were molded and we were created to be placed in our mother's womb for such a time as this. And if you have gone through darkness and you've gone through trauma, girl, you're not alone, because
Mm.
we all have. If we were all to stand inside of an auditorium and I was to say, every time I say something, and if it relates to you, stand up. If I was to say, who in this auditorium has been raped, has been sexually abused, has been traumatized, who has been a victim of domestic violence, by the time I asked all these questions, every single woman in that room would be standing up. The
Yeah.
difference is that there's not every single woman in that room is really ready to take the journey of what it takes to heal. It's it doesn't take much to wear that t-shirt to say, yep, I'm trauma. Yep, I've gone through this. But it takes courage and it takes determination to say, this is not going to define me any longer. That I'm going to go through this healing process and I'm going to go through the scrubbing, of the dead skin so the new skin can set. I want women to understand that you are your own superheroes, that you don't need to be super, Wonder Woman. You don't need to be Catwoman because you already are a superwoman. Stand in the mirror and declare that you are the daughter of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you were created for such a time as this. You were created for abundance. You were created to do great things. You were created to have the word of your testimony. And if you have lived in the fire, I want you to know that there is a man named Jesus that also went into the fire. There's a man named Jesus that also went on that cross and shed his blood for you and for you alone. And if you were the only person in this world, he would have came to die for you. Hang on to the hem of his garment and know that there is a purpose for your life. There's a destiny for your life. And at the end of this life, and you stand at the gate, may he say, you good and faithful servant, because you honored him and you poured out your love to him and you poured out your spirit and you're willing to help the brokenhearted.
So beautiful. I could listen to you talk and talk because there's such power and authority and wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Thank you. Um, what else are you up to other than writing your book? I know you mentioned you're gonna do some speaking engagements. What else?
I am. And I'm also, just like we talked beforehand,
Yeah.
is that I only have 2 more states in the United States to cover all 50 states. So I have Oklahoma and New Mexico that I need to go to, and then I will have completed all 50 states. So that is I'm hoping by the end of September, I would have completed all 50 states. And then I'm writing a travel book of all my different travels and the things that I have learned. And the book is, it doesn't come out, it'll probably be a year before it comes out. But I also became a life coach because I had lost my job it will be a year in October that I lost my job. And I decided, that I had a mandate, I had a mission. And I am a life coach. And I have clients that what I do is I actually send them a box in the mail. And this box has all these different projects that we're going to do together, because I believe that when you do something and you have to tangibly touch it, it inspires you and it stays in the back of your head continually. So my life coaching is called Healing Through Stories, Finding Your Journey Along the Way. And so it is an amazing thing. It's an 8-week program. It doesn't cost very much, because I just believe that sometimes being a life coach is more about being a missionary and being somebody for them and not charging these thousands and thousands of dollars, that people are paying. Like, it's just like, I couldn't afford that. So I'm doing that. And I have been asked over and over again to do a Bible study with my new book on the God who sees, because there's so much meat in it. And so I'm working on that to be able to, do that. So I just need to somehow financially be able to make a living. I don't need to make an abundant living. I just need to be able to make a living that I can go out and still, heal brokenhearted, through the word of God. So that's pretty much what I'm on.
Wow. You're on a mission. Wow.
I'm on a mission. I am on a mission. And it's so funny that even, I thought I was been up all night long just praying because, of the whole Charlie Kirk. And, are we doing enough? It, ask that it deems that question. This man was willing to die for his faith, even if you didn't believe what he said or talked about or whatever. And there are some times I'm like, whoa, Charlie, you've gone a little too far, kind of thing. But he was 31 years old and he was
Very
making
young.
a difference.
Yeah.
He was
So
willing
young.
to stand up for his faith. And somebody had asked him, what do you want to be remembered by? And he said, I want to be remembered that I had the courage to serve Christ, even if it was alone.
Wow. Wow.
That's like 31 years old. And we sit around and go, oh, do I dare share my story? Do I dare, say this, and, and I'm even more determined,
Oh yeah.
even now,
Yeah.
more determined to
Yeah.
say, I don't want people to die on my watch because I didn't share
Mm. Yeah.
my story.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. So Bambi, where can people find you? Do you have a website or are you on social media?
Oh my goodness, I'm all over social media. What influencer isn't? I do have a website, healingthroughstories.com. It's all one word. And I do blog, probably I was blogging, 4 times a month, but I was finding that people were getting overwhelmed, that they weren't reading them necessarily.
Mm.
So probably about 2 times a month that I'm sharing a story.
Yeah.
And I am on social media. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel called Our Story 555 that my grandson set up. That's 10. That I would never be able to set it up, but he did. And then I'm on Facebook, and most of them are Bambi Lynn. And if you can't find me, you can also look me up on 𝐒𝐨𝐫𝐞. And if you ever want to write a story, for my blog, you can send a story to me on josephine.ourstory@gmail.com. And I would love to post your story and your testimony so my readers can also see that we're not alone.
That's awesome. One last
Yeah.
question for you. What is the meaning of life for you?
The meaning of life is getting up every morning and living it. The meaning of life is sharing your life and making your life have a difference. There's going to be times in our lives that we're going to feel broken and we're going to be in a fetal position because we've been so broken. But then there comes a time in our lives that we get up out of that fetal position and we raise our hands and say, I surrender. And then we begin to start living again. If my life isn't impacting other people's lives, am I really living? And if people don't know within the first 5 minutes, even if I never say the name of Jesus, will people know that there's something different about me? To me, that's life. That's living life to the fullest. That's me living life not afraid. And even if I am afraid of living life, that I still do it, that I still continue to walk into my life.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Bambi, for coming on the podcast. Continue the powerful work that you're doing. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. You're welcome to come back anytime. I'm excited to stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, if anybody wants any of my books or anything, you can order them on Amazon, or you can also order them on my website, healingthroughstories.com. But you can also go on Amazon and look them up. And my name is Bambi Lynn. But just make sure there's 2 Bambi Lynns on Amazon.
There is.
One of them writes exotic Renaissance romances.
Oh.
I do not.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that and clarifying so people can
thank you so much. And you continue to, do the work that you were called to do. Don't stop, even if people are saying, to stop. You continue on the mission and the vision that God has given to you. You continue to open up people's eyes and help the healing and set the captive free. You have a mission, you have a mandate. Yes. And I just pray that you continue to use that mandate because you're needed in this world.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.